Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm Steve Lance. A Democratic senator saying that we cannot ignore the differences between biological men and women. This was in regard to a so-called masculinity crisis that he says his fellow Democrats must address. Here's part of what he said.
Democratic Senator Chris Murphy took to Twitter after reading Of Boys and Men. The book addresses an apparent crisis among men, which some say leads to less masculinity and higher rates of depression and suicide. In addressing the book and possible solutions, Murphy stated that we cannot avoid the biological and evolutionary differences between men and women. This contrasts recent theories that have led some to subscribe to the idea that there are no differences between men and women. Among the issues Murphy addresses in his series of tweets is that boys these days are much more likely to get bad grades in school than girls and not complete college, and that most wages for men are lower today than they were 50 years ago, while women's wages have risen across the board. When talking about solutions for that, Murphy says progressives shouldn't think men and masculinity is just something the right talks about. There is something profound happening with American men, and the left should address it with more responsible solutions. Murphy says there are things the right gets wrong on the issues as well as the left, indicating both sides should work together to find solutions.
The Supreme Court has ruled that web designers cannot be forced to go against their values. What does this decision mean for the U.S. moving forward? To discuss the case, we have senior counsel at the Alliance for Defending Freedom, Matt Sharp. Matt Sharp, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, Matt, 303 Creative LLC versus Elenis. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of 303 Creative. What is your take, and what does this exactly mean moving forward?
Yeah, we were very encouraged by this decision, with the Supreme Court recognizing that Colorado and really no government can ever force any American to speak a message to support an idea or belief that they disagree with. And so with the court ruling for 303 Creative that Lori Smith cannot be forced to create websites that violate her beliefs, it truly is a win for every American's freedom of speech and guarantee that none of us can be coerced or compelled to say something we disagree with.
Now, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg yesterday making the rounds on the Sunday shows, suggesting that this was all potentially premeditated on the web designer's part. Have a listen.
There's no evidence that this web designer was ever even approached by anyone asking for a website for a same-sex wedding. Matter of fact, it appears this web designer only went into the wedding business for the purpose of provoking a case like this.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, simply wrong. Not only did Lori always have a passion for going into this realm to be able to help couples celebrate weddings, but she did receive a request to design a website for a same-sex wedding. And not only that, but Lori had seen what had happened to Jack Smith, the Colorado cake artist, who was being punished and prosecuted under one of these laws as well. So when Lori stepped up, she recognized that her lifelong dream of being able to celebrate weddings, to create websites and designs consistent in her beliefs, was going to be punished by Colorado, which Colorado itself admitted to. So Secretary Buttigieg's comments are simply false, do not reflect the facts, but more importantly, they don't reflect an understanding how important this victory is for all of us, including those that may not agree with Lori.
So, Matt, to your point, those that some on the other side, they might argue this has to do with civil rights. So I guess what would you say to them in terms of what's the difference between rejecting someone based on the circumstances of race versus sex?
Well, with all of these, the question is it about the who or the what? If you're turning someone away because of who they are, because of their race, their identity, or any other characteristics, that's not what this case is about, because Lori, like many of our other clients, do serve everyone regardless of their identity. Rather, what this is about is the message. Lori was being asked to create a message, was being told by Colorado she would have to create messages, speak ideas that violate her beliefs. So when we're talking about the message, no American should ever be forced by the government to speak a message, to create a idea that violates their core convictions. And that's the difference in all of these cases. It's always about the what is being asked of them, what are they being asked to say, not who is making that request.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about the jurors' prudence predicament. What is your sort of guiding light in a day and age when things seem like they've become subjective, often with lines being blurred?
Well, I think how Justice Gorsuch put it well is that we are seeing more and more of these laws pop up that do violate fundamental rights, that do infringe on free speech, religious liberty, or other rights. And as Gorsuch noted, when those laws collide with the Constitution must prevail. And that is our guiding star for our rights as Americans. And so to know that the freedom of speech, the freedom to exercise your religion, when those issues are at stake, the court is going to vigorously defend our rights and stand with our rights under the Constitution.
And lastly, Matt, how might this ruling translate into, say, other businesses and the way they conduct their business moving forward?
Well, I think anyone ought to be celebrating this. So, for example, if you are an LGBT website designer, this opinion guarantees that you're not going to be forced to create a website disparaging same-sex marriage. If you're a Muslim graphic artist, you don't have to worry about being forced to create custom designs that promote Judaism or Christianity or any other belief system. This is going to be a great victory that's going to apply to countless Americans so that they never have to worry that if they're on the wrong side of the government, if they're holding views that may be not popular, this opinion is going to protect their freedom to operate their businesses and to speak in ways that align with their core beliefs and values.
Matt Sharp, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Amidst the July heat, presidential candidates are ramping up their campaigns, and NTD's Iris Tao brings us more from the White House.
The 2024 presidential campaign trail heating up ahead of July 4th holiday. Former President Trump marked a return to massive rallies this past weekend, speaking to some 50,000 supporters in South Carolina.
There's nowhere else I'd rather be to kick off the 4th of July weekend than right here on Main Street with thousands of proud, hardworking South Carolina.
The huge crowd packed the streets of downtown Pickens, a small conservative town with just 3,400 residents, and also marked the first rally that Trump held after his federal indictment in June.
We need our independence back.
And Trump also applauded the recent Supreme Court decisions on affirmative action and student loans.
We appointed nearly 300 federal judges and 3 great Supreme Court justices. A merit-based system of education. How big is that?
All this as Trump's leading contender in the GOP race, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, also spoke at the same event as Trump just days ago at an event held by Moms for Liberty.
2024 is going to be the year when the parents across this country finally fight back.
And as GOP candidates are ramping up their campaign events, President Biden is also going on what the White House is calling an Invest in America tour. This Thursday, President Biden is also traveling to South Carolina, the battleground state in which a slew of GOP candidates, including Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, DeSantis, and Trump, have all held campaign events in the past few weeks. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
So what better way to celebrate the 4th of July than right here in the nation's capital, amidst all of our historic monuments? That's where thousands are today, including NTD's Melina Wisecup.
Foot traffic is heavy at the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. Visitors gather around a massive 129-foot-tall marble structure. In the founder's hand, the Declaration of Independence.
When you walk in there and it's huge, it's just very exhilarating almost.
American citizens and tourists alike come right here to soak in the heritage and social fabric of our country. Let's hear from them how the legacy of Jefferson still resonates centuries later.
He is one of the greatest persons I can ever think of, besides Lincoln himself, who set the slaves free, that he wanted freedom for everyone and wanted to get away from the tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson was the most important of all the founding fathers, just for the statement that all men are created equal.
The walls are filled with carved giant letters for quotations from Jefferson's writings. Jefferson was a renowned scholar of his time. The intellectual culture that he pursued, some say, is being left behind.
And I think his sentiments on educating the people generally are being lost throughout, besides just moral decay, just intellectual decay. We're having a big divide between the people who know a lot and the ones who don't care to learn.
And it's just bringing down the nation as a whole because nobody's trying to understand the world around them, and that's really just causing our downfall here.
Included along the memorial walls is an excerpt from the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson's most famous work, and the one that guides and preserves American heritage in which so many around the world find comfort.
there's a space for every culture, and you can get to know other people from other places, get to understand what they do, what they think about.
And as you sit on the steps of Jefferson's memorial, you can take a look at another Founding Fathers monument, George Washington. It's in a direct line from the White House. President Roosevelt, who signed off on the construction of the Jefferson Memorial in 1943, ordered trees to be cut down so that the view from the White House would be enhanced. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.